don't I start up the recording, and then yeah, like I said, this session to begin here at least, we're gonna go over a lot of mindset what do you think about as you're going through this improvement process, and that's gonna be maybe like this first third or the first half of the session. Then we'll get into some gameplay for the second half. So why don't we begin with just emphasizing that while you are playing, the the importance should be on improvement, right? Even if that's not your primary objective, you're going to want to have that as the thing that you're aiming for, because that's how you really attain any of them, right? If you're trying to have, if you're trying to win games, you got to get better. If you're trying to climb, you got to get better. If you're trying to have more fun, which probably entails dying less, right, and killing more things, you got to get better, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's always
yeah, exactly. So improvement needs to be the background mindset, which by default, and maybe this is something I told you last time, but it's also been a couple months, so I'll refresh it for you. That means that as you're playing, you don't want to just kind of autopilot. You don't want to just walk around and just do your stuff. You want to be playing with the intention of going somewhere, with improving. So what that's going to look like, and this will maybe become easier once we start going into things to kind of comprehend, but what you're going to do while you're going to play is that you're not going to autopilot, but you're going to intentionally focus on the thing you're trying to work on. That means that you're not going to that means you're not going to autopilot. It means you're not going to just play to play, and contrary to popular belief, you're not going to purely play to win, because then you just kind of stagnate, but instead you're going to play to improve. And what that will actually look like within your gameplay is you're going to pick something out, which, I'll make that easier on yourself. When we're doing coaching, I'll kind of give you what I think you should work on near the end of our sessions. But you're going to pick something out. Let's say, for example, positioning, right? And you're going to give yourself reminders. You're going to think to yourself, positioning, cover, high grounds, high grounds, right? You're going to give yourself a constant stream of reminders to think about where should you be standing. And when you think about where you should be standing, well, you'll probably stand in a bit better positioning than if you didn't think of it at all, right?
Okay, yeah.
And when you do that for a long enough period of time, it forms it as a positive habit. Once that forms as a positive habit, then you don't really need to worry about it. You don't need to really worry about it anymore. It just kind of comes naturally, so you can move on to something else to work on. Final thing would just be, don't try to do everything all at the same time, because that'll get overwhelming if we're talking about 15 different things in the session. Don't try to do all 15, because that's just going to be a little too much. Instead, think about the one category or 1 to 3 smaller things within a category. Now we have plenty of time, so I'm going to go a bit more in depth on that. You can work on multiple things if they're unrelated. So think, for example, primarily the thing is unrelated in time overlapping. So if you think about positioning, when you're playing Overwatch, how frequently are you positioning?
Well, pretty much all the time, every single fight.
Yeah, exactly, right? You're positioning, if you're really dumbing it down and simplifying it, positioning is standing somewhere. And you're constantly standing somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And there's not a time in your game where you're not standing somewhere. So, therefore, positioning's a constant. What about awareness? Right? Awareness is paying attention to your surroundings. How frequently are you using awareness in a game?
Probably not all the time, but whenever you're engaging in a fight or in a fight, but if you've got breaks between fights, or sort of either waiting for the opponent to come back, or waiting for you to come back.
So you've mostly got it, and I'll correct it a little bit. So you mostly got it. You're saying, pretty much most of the time. And I'd correct it to say all the time, or at least you should be all the time, because there's never a moment in your game where there's not something to be aware of. So let's say you're at the very beginning of the game, you just loaded into the game, right? And you picked your character. Well, it's a bit more minor of a point, but you can be pressing tab and seeing, okay, well, what characters is my team running? Because team composition dictates playstyle. You play differently when your team's on different things. You can pay attention. Like if you're on defense or offense, sometimes you can keep your ears open and listen, like, and try to identify what are they running before you're even out of spawn, right? And
Yeah.
just by listening to them shooting or looking up the doors and things like that. If you're in between fights, you can be thinking about, okay, what did they swap? Press tab. I recommend press tab at least once in between every single fight, because it gives you a lot of info. Did they swap characters? Did we swap characters? What ultimates do we have to work with? What's my plan for next fight? What am I going to be doing? Am I ulting? Am I, where should I be standing? There's something, and then of course during fights, there's so much stuff to pay attention to.
Yeah.
There's always something to pay attention to, right?
Okay. Yeah.
There's times where it's maybe a bit more minute. Like it's not the end of the world if you're not paying attention, but there's still always going to be something to pay attention to if you're trying to maximize, your awareness to the fullest.
Yeah.
So therefore, once again, it's kind of an all the time thing. So if you're trying to improve and you're going through your gameplay and you're trying to do awareness and positioning at the exact same time, ain't gonna work out too good for you, because that
No.
just might
Okay.
be way too much. It's you're trying to go over two things simultaneously, two
Yeah.
giant categories, and they're both happening all the time together. Now,
Yeah.
how frequently throughout the game do you use your ultimate?
Whenever possibly whenever it's charged, but
And
yeah, not all the time.
yeah,
No.
not all the time, right? Definitely not all the time. And then, like, how often are you getting your ultimate? Like, is it every fight? Is it every other fight? Is it
Every other fight, really? Isn't
yeah,
it? Yeah.
every other fight? Now, when you do have, let's say you have your ultimates at 100%, from the time of thinking, oh, I should use my ultimate, to the time of actually pressing the button, or pressing the button and or using it during the button, how long is that usually taking?
I suppose it depends again.
Yeah.
Sort of between how many people they've got in the fight and how many people sort of we've got in the fight as a team. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of whether
So
it's worth it.
maybe it depends on, firstly, like, should you even use your ultimate? Maybe it depends on, is there the right timing to use it? Maybe it depends on, like, what ultimate are what character are you on? What ultimate are you using? Because some ultimates have a higher thinking requirement than other ultimates, right? That sort of thing. I'd say generally you're not touching above like the 30-second mark if you're using it well, right? Like if you're holding on to it for forever, then maybe you're gonna be thinking about it for 4 minutes. But generally speaking, if you're using it frequently, which you should be, you shouldn't be thinking about it longer than 30 seconds, like maybe max, right? And then sometimes maybe it could take even less than that if we just see the right opportunity and we use it. Maybe it takes, for popping nano boost, maybe that takes us 10 seconds, right, to find. So that's not continuously. That's not an all the time thing. So if that's maybe 20% of our gameplay, what we can do is just kind of swap on and off of thinking between those things. We can go, okay, every time I have my ultimate, I'm thinking about my ultimate, and that's going to be 20% of my game. And then every time I don't got my ultimate, I'm thinking about positioning, and then that's the other 80% of your game. And that's not nearly as bad as if you're trying to split it up like half and half, and they're both happening at the same time, and you're like, it's just all over the place, right? So does that make sense? And then so the ultimates is the easiest example. There's probably a lot of other ones that are kind of like that as well. As you go through other niche ones, ultimate's just the big category that is infrequent. So it's the easy example. But does that all that making sense so far? Any questions on it?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Alrighty, so let's move on then. Self-improvement. So this is the idea that you're not going to want to eternally be paying me money. Now, I as much as I would love that, that's not something that I want for you. I don't want you to have to be coming back for session 30. I want you to kind of leave the nest, fly away out of the nest and be able to quote unquote coach yourself, be able to identify things on your own, and that, in my opinion, is one of the marks of a, how do I say this? That's someone who knows how to coach themselves at things. That's a skill that applies not just Overwatch, but a lot of other things as well in life. And you're just going to be able to get good at things easily, right? And yeah, so I'm basically let's go over that now. Like, how do you get good at things and coach yourself? When I first, let me start off with this. When I started playing the game, I don't know how much you recall from like my bio, but I started off in silver, my
All
first
right.
in season 3. And I this is like my first FPS game on PC. I had no clue. I was coming from Minecraft, and I had no clue what the heck I was doing. And then I just started, going through kind of some of this process. Whether it was not it was not intellectual. It wasn't articulated at the time. It was kind of an internal thing. But since then,
Right.
I've kind of, I've kind of figured out what happened. And then eventually, I got to 4,400, top, like top 50 ish, around
Right.
that range on, on
Yeah.
multiple occasions. So, um, that that's basically this process. I didn't get coaching until after I'd already hit my peak in the game. It was all basically self-taught with, of course, YouTube videos mixed in there, guides, and maybe I watched like an occasional streamer once in a while.
Yeah.
I'd probably recommend it, but I'd never personally did VOD reviews with myself, so that's more so to say not that VOD reviews are bad, but that it's not a
Mm.
necessity in your gameplay. It definitely would help speed up the process. I was a kid, so I had a lot of time to play.
Yeah.
But if you don't have as much time, maybe self VOD reviewing can also help with it once you start to learn the process. But the main thing is you're gonna want to try to learn how to identify mistakes, and I'm basically gonna uh, this is how I essentially coach people, and I'm going to walk you through how I coach people, and then you'll kind of figure it out as we go along through our different sessions. What do mistakes look like? How do you identify them? How do you solve them? So as you're going through, the example I always use is deaths, because deaths are very easy thing to understand. Everybody
Yeah.
knows dying is bad for them. Sometimes they don't understand how bad dying is for them, but people understand dying's bad. So
No. Yeah. Yeah.
dying would be a mistake. Mistakes,
Yeah.
we don't like mistakes. You want to fix and solve and get rid of mistakes, because if you make less mistakes, that means better gameplay. That is what we call improvement. um,
Yeah.
so basically, cutting back on deaths is improvement. And therefore, we want the first step we're gonna take to solving the mistake is identifying the underlying issue behind the mistake. So if
Yeah.
I just say, "Oh, I died," then where does that really get me? Oh, I should just, then my next step is thinking, "Oh, maybe I should just not die." Well, how
Mm.
specific is that? Like, what if I
Yeah.
coached you and I just told you, "Oh, you should have not
Don't die.
died there." Or if I told you, "Oh, you should have gotten a kill there." That sort of thing. That's not very specific. So narrow it down,
Mm.
make it a bit
Yeah.
easier. Identify why you died. What are maybe some common reasons why people die in Overwatch?
Bad positioning.
Yep. Correct.
Sort of bad. Sort of just based on some of the gameplay that I've got from today. Sort of there was a couple of deaths that were preventable for me. Sort of bad position and then sort of bad aggression sort of
Yeah,
thing.
over
So
over aggression. Yeah,
yeah, over aggression. So like, but that again, sort of, I suppose it's the same, similar to bad positioning.
yeah. Over aggression is like
Um,
it's related. It's kind of like a subcategory, but it's also its own
yeah,
thing. Yep.
yeah. And then yeah, sort of probably you could go say the same with like bad awareness.
Yep.
So sort of
Lack of
yeah,
awareness. Yep.
yeah, not knowing that someone's where someone you didn't expect them to be.
Exactly.
Yeah, sort of lack of using abilities.
Yeah, or the way I'd say it is misuse of abilities. Maybe you
Yeah,
didn't use them when you could have, or you missed them, or you used them when you didn't need to, and now you don't got them.
yeah,
Yep. All right. Yeah. You're on the right track, man, because you got a lot of those right off the bat. Maybe like into other
okay,
tinier nicher ones to add in would be like
yeah,
poor movement, like if you're just standing still or moving in a straight line,
yeah,
that sort of thing. And then there's other even nicher ones, like where you could go further into to awareness, where you ult tracking, but that's advanced stuff, right?
yeah,
But you got most of them. You got most of the main ones. And so you think through that. Those are you got the mistake, which is death. You got the issues, which are those. You identify, okay, I just died. You can do this. You can do this in in a VOD review, in a replay, which is what I'm probably going to do, with you when I'm going through your gameplay. Or you can do this as you're playing, which is what I did. Is you play, you die. Okay, you got like 20 seconds while you're respawning and walking back. Maybe use that time to think about it, right? Use that time to go, why did I just die, right? So you think okay, why did I just die? You find the issue. Maybe the issue was I was standing out in the open and that got me killed. Okay, so that's the issue, was poor positioning. Now the next step is finding the solution. Solution's decently easy, I would think. I'd say it's maybe a bit self-explanatory or common sense, because oftentimes it's the opposite of the issue. What's the opposite or the solution to a being out in the open and dying from poor positioning?
Not being out in the open.
Not being out in the open, or AKA, in other words, cover usage. Exactly.
Cover,
Yep. So that's just, it's the simplicity of it. Is okay. That's I was out in the open, gotta use cover. So maybe think, which cover could I have used? Right? Was I, could I have used that cover, this cover? Think about it actively as you're going through the game. Then finally comes application, which circles back around to what we talked about before of maybe application. A lot of times is like we said already, focusing on the positioning as you're playing through, right? Putting intentionality behind it, thinking through while you're playing, I should use cover. I should use cover, right? And then you'll probably use it a bit more. So all of that making sense on just the process behind self-improvement?
I think so, yeah.
So as we go through, I'm going to start to point out, and that's just one type of mistake and issues and whatnot. As we go through, I'm going to start to help you identify a ton of other different types of mistakes across abilities and ultimates and game, mechanics and all the other gameplay, right? And you should, as you're just going through that, try to pay attention a little bit too, so that you can start identifying those same things, so that you can identify those same mistakes. You'll start to get an eye for it as we go along, if that all makes sense. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Thinking, what else is there to review before we hop in? Maybe other minor things we can add in there. Be careful of, I'm not sure if this is a thing, but I'll just mention as a warning, be careful of tilt queuing, which is basically just anytime you queue for ranked after you are on a loss streak. That's just the term for it. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're tilted and upset. That could be the reason. That's the very common reason. It could also just be because you're having a bad day, you're tired, you're just not doing good. And the general rule of thumb is that when you start losing, you keep losing. So there's no reason to just keep intentionally, there's no reason to intentionally keep losing when you could just hop off. So I'd set a limit for yourself. Maybe set it at like 2 or 3 games. And if you lose 2 games, do an evaluation and go, am I good? Am I tired? Is something up? If you're playing perfectly and you're in a good mood, maybe you play another. If not, if you're like, oh, I'm tired, take a break.
Right, yeah.
Take a break. Maybe it's like 30 minutes, go do something else, right? Get away from your computer, or just go watch YouTube, something like that, right? And then come back, try again. If you still losing, then just be done for the day. That's not to say you gotta hop off Overwatch. Maybe it's just hop off your main. Maybe you go onto another role. Maybe you go onto an alternate account to play ranked. Maybe you go and play quick play arcade or something. Just don't play on your main account, because there's no reason to keep losing.
Makes sense.
All right. Now we've been talking for a minute. Just checking once again. Any questions on things so far, or just like anything about the game?
No. I mean, no. It's all making sense. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, definitely makes sense.
Gotcha.
So, it's just.
Gotcha.
Think about.
Re-clarify with me once again. What was your hero pool in the game?
I know I played a lot of Reinhardt. So yeah, play tank. So a lot of Reinhardt, and then sort of because of the nature of the season. I've been playing a little bit of Orisa, but with the Orisa rework, I'm not as up to speed with Orisa, I suppose, as I am with Reinhardt, but I still do all right with Orisa. But mainly then too, I don't really have many others that sort of. I suppose at the beginning of Overwatch 2, I was playing a little bit as Zarya, just because like you needed to be able to play that hero, I suppose. But no, Reinhardt's definitely my main. I would like to be able to play other heroes, but I think that comes down the line. So I think
works with me.
Yeah.
Now this is a question for you. Are you a bit, because this kind of differs from person to person, are you a big consumer of like Overwatch media, not necessarily just like news media, or like, do you typically watch any like Overwatch League? Do you watch any streamers? Do you watch guides or coaching videos?
Bits, but not religiously. Sort of, I'll like in work, I'll go on YouTube, and if there's like video by like Flats or something playing, then I'll watch it. Or sometimes if like Tim's playing Overwatch, then I might watch it. But not religiously. It's not one of them. And I'll normally won't watch. Don't really watch a lot of League. If there's drops enabled, then I might put the stream on to make sure I get the drops, but I won't proper religiously watch it again.
Gotcha. Really. Yeah, I mean, no, fair enough. Fair enough. I'm me neither. So in any case, I would just encourage you, like, if you do ever play and you're just like, if you're trying to learn from it and not necessarily just like mindless, I think too often times people just kind of look at it and they're like, huh, I'm watching Overwatch League. This should be making me better, right? If you are ever going to like watch gameplay to make you better, once again, think through similar things to what we were just talking about, but think through like, what are they doing differently from you with their game? Like, how are they using, like, and don't try to focus on, don't try to take in everything. Maybe just focus on a part of their game, because everything, maybe like with like all of my 5,000 hours of gameplay, maybe I can watch them do everything, but maybe if you're not that experienced, maybe it's just like, I need to work on my abilities. Let me watch how they're using abilities and just kind of stare at their abilities and watch, okay, what situations are they using their abilities? Are they using their abilities all the time? Are they using it once in a while? Does that change depending on team composition? Are they throwing their abilities in aggressively? Are they using them defensively? That sort of thing. Are there any techniques that they're using that they're doing with their abilities? That sort of thing. So just like thinking through critically, not overwhelming yourself, and just not kind of like, if you ever do it for the learning, don't just mindlessly stare at it, which can, I think, catch people off sometimes, like make it like I said, like, the bronze player who watches Overwatch League all the time and they're like, oh yeah, like, why I don't know how I'm bronze, it's all my teammates.
Yeah, basically they're sort of trying to get into the positions that maybe like they're watching the Overwatch League Widows playing and they're like, oh, I'm in the perfect position, but they're getting killed and sort of stuff like that. And like they're blaming the people for not protecting them in the positions and stuff like that. Yeah,
all right. Well, I think that we've got a decent foundation for the moment. So we can start to hop into that replay just for sessions moving forwards. A lot of it is we're going to get into some like full gameplay review sessions. Some of these mixed in will be kind of checkups and just making sure that you're properly progressing, that you're not going backwards or standing still with your gameplay, which would hopefully not be the case. We're hoping for some actual moving forwards and improvement, right? That's the goal. So we'll do some checkups, see how things are going, change anything around as we need to change things around, and whatnot. So why don't we hop into it, and then as things come up, more, of course, more mental stuff and mindset stuff that'll always kind of be trickling in, and whatnot. So why don't we hop into some of the gameplay?
Okay. yeah, sort of like I said, I had 3 games earlier just to sort of get some gameplay. Yeah, there's not as much to pick from as I ideally would, but yeah, there's a bit. I'm
All
sure
good.
there's always going to be something to
Yeah, something to go over.
comment on. Yeah,
Never play a game perfect. Remind me what your in-game name was again?
Carlos Bean.
Carlos Bean.
I'm
There you
the
go.
Reinhardt time one. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. First thing I'd recommend is usually it's a good idea to just charge out of spawn. This on most, but not on everything. I'd say, for example, like on control points. It's like escort and you're coming out of spawn.
Yeah. Yeah.
For your team. So
Okay.
usually it's a good idea to charge out of spawn, just get back faster on first. But then also when you're coming back like from, in between fights and
Yeah.
stuff like that, it's going to be a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I do. When I'm coming back from the fights, it's just like the initial
Mm.
fight. What like the thought of wanting to stay with the team.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, it
But
also
yeah,
helps
that makes
keep
sense.
you. It also helps keep you ahead of your teammates, so that you don't have
Yeah.
a faster character running in ahead of you as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's really just charge out, but make sure you're just paying attention. You're not like sprinting, 50 meters out in front of them.
Yeah. You're getting picked off. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So, here we didn't notice that on.
Yeah. There's as I was watching it as well as actually a soldier behind us. Okay.
Would it be if you like were right here and soldiers there, and you go clunk, 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 clunk? You're just
Yeah.
like slowly walking at.
Right. Yeah.
Now here, this is a thing, and this is maybe a bit of awareness, and that you don't really seem to notice the Ana. And if
No.
you notice the Ana, that's probably a bit easier of a target than the Sigma, or
Yeah.
maybe a
Yeah.
bit better of an option to run at. And yet we
I
kind of don't
suppose
see.
it's one of them. Like compared to the soldier's always going to be able to get away from you. But if you take a fight against the Ana, then chances are should be able to win the fight against the Ana with no movement abilities.
Okay. Also noting that like they had somebody who's AFK, so just make sure like kind of paying
Yeah.
attention for that sort of thing. All right, we will possibly go over some aggression scaling soon, but I want to see a
Yeah.
bit more of it. But just note that I'll just really briefly mention it. We're up 2 people, or like up a person, up 2 people at the moment. We just killed the Ana, and they also have somebody who is AFK and hasn't even come back yet. So right now it's a 5v3, and we're kind of like backed off and playing passive at the moment. Or sorry, here it is. Now it's a 3v5, right? And then we kind of like we get that, and then also look at Sigma's health bar there. I keep saying Sigma. They have similar names. Ramatra, Ram.
Yeah.
Ram, he's on like 1 HP, right, as well.
Yeah.
So, noticing that, we can kind of probably should be running in at the moment, not backing out. And we'll go over maybe a bit of some tools on how to see that in a minute. Now we should be backing out. Very nice. Probably could just be tossing in. Yeah, there you go. Just toss those in there.
Yeah.
Fire strikes are something you can just be using kind of off cooldown because they are one of your best sources of ult charge. Just because it's such a you can get them in between fights and things like that. So just getting them infrequently is gonna be a really good idea. So like here, for example, we're kind of holding on to a couple of them. Just could be chucking them in there.
Yeah, just might get out hit. So gives them something to think about as well.
Yeah, though I would say during a fight you may want to have them handy. So maybe if you're in between, you can be chucking them in, and then try to recharge them before the fight starts. That way you have them handy for if you need them.
Okay.
And then you can kind of rotate them. Maybe you use one of them and then let it recharge, and use it again and then let it recharge. Like that way you always have one.
You've always got one there.
Yeah. Okay. So once again, someone's kind of like walking right past us. Just keep your ears open. We'll maybe discuss more on that as we go along. We have tons of time too. So there we kind of push. Here, noticing with.
Yeah, Lucio died, it seemed.
Was Moira coming back from spawn? No, Moira was just kind of walking off to heal the Mei. Because if we know, oh snap, our healers are on the on the my Moira's across the point from me, maybe ready. Maybe that's the time where we start to back off and play minorly more passive. So one of my first recommendations here is anytime before, it's just a good habit to get into. Maybe not as necessary if you become like a pro at it, but this is very good beginner tip here is before you push, do a 360 and look behind you. Like anytime before you're about to press W and walk, just do a quick like sweep. Where's my team at? And then you might do the sweep and go, oh snap, my team's not with me. Let me just wait and sit on the corner here. Right?
Okay, yeah.
If your whole team is in, or if you see your whole team's with you, then you can push. Right? Then you can.
Yeah.
Because here we die primarily just because we don't got supports. The main thing.
Also difficult with Reinhardt being able to just go right through the shield as well.
Yeah.
Which is always fun.
Okay. Gotta be real careful because we're kind of right now we're sprinting at two characters who can Reinhardt who can go through our shield. And then also Reaper, who if we have our shield down, can melt us. So once again, being careful, you gotta kind of really carefully watch your health bar here. And once you see Reaper start sprinting at you, you're like starting to get down on the HP. I'd start to get a bit careful, like right around here, right? Reaper and Reinhardt and your half HP. I'd start to start backing off a hair. So why don't we go over really quickly aggression scaling, because that's going to be a really handy tool that applies to every character in the game, but particularly it's most handy for tanks and whatnot. And it's also I've seen it come up a couple times. So let's go over it.
Yeah.
Aggression scaling is basically a tool. It's kind of like it's like a mindset. It's a way to view the game, and it helps you kind of organize it all in your head, right?
Yeah.
So aggression scaling is the idea that you take your aggression when you push, when you back, and you put it on a scale, like a slider. You have at 0% is your super passive. At 100% is your super aggressive, and at 50% that's your neutral, right? Usually you come into each fight at 50% because nothing's really going on yet, right? If you come into a fight and you're starting off at 50%, nothing's really happened to make you adjust at all. And 50% doesn't mean that you're hiding off in the back, and it doesn't mean that you're sprinting into their team. It means maybe you're kind of in the middle. You swing, you shield, you swing, you shield, you push, you back. It's kind of a little bit more flowy, right?
Okay.
Now you're on this slider. You're going to adjust upwards on the scale with advantages and with opportunities, and you're going to adjust downwards on the scale with disadvantages, with a lack of resources, and with danger. So let's define a couple of those advantages and disadvantages. There's the very basics of these are going to be kills, right? So
Okay, yeah.
let's say your team, let's say you're up one person, right? You get a kill. Now you go from a 50% to a 60%. You get 2 kills, you go from 60 to 70%. You're playing a little bit more aggro. You're pushing in, right?
Yeah.
You're winning. You got a big advantage, right? You get 3 kills, now you're up to 85, 4 kills, 95 kills. That's a full team wipe. You're up at 100%, right? That's that sort of thing. Right? Same thing in the opposite direction with disadvantages. You lose a player, you go from 50 to 40. You lose 2 players, 40 to 30. Right? You go and so forth. You go down. Right? Now that's not the only thing within advantages and disadvantages. I mean, like I said, we have. Why don't I go in depth on it? We can kind of take the time to go in depth on all of these since we have. You have the whole the rapid improvement training plan, right? So we have the time, so let's do it. There's a lot of other things that go into whether or not you've won or lost a fight, right? And advantages and disadvantages as well. Things such as which team has more health, which team has better positioning, which team has and is using more ultimates, more abilities, which team has closer spawns, which team is more grouped up. Sometimes in certain team comps, maybe being spread apart is better. Things like that, right? Those are a bunch of other advantages and disadvantages, and sometimes those can be sometimes they're all together. That can, if you have like 5 different advantages, that can be really weighty, or sometimes it can be really minor, and it just kind of it's there. So that's advantages, disadvantages. I'll come back to that after we're done. After we're done aggression scaling, I'll come back to that with another topic in a minute. But you go up with advantages, you go down with disadvantages. So for example, we're watching right now, we just got 2 kills. Big advantage, right? That means that currently, as if I'm doing this head math right, it's a 3v2, almost 4v2.
Yeah.
Maybe almost.
Okay. So
just upwards with opportunities. Opportunities are going to be maybe someone's low HP, right? If you're full HP and if you're able to, right? If you're full HP and you see that the Reaper's 1 HP here, well then you get aggressive, you push forwards and you swing at him because you want to get the kill, right? Other opportunities could be somebody's out of position, like the Ana we saw earlier is out of position. Maybe you got your ults to use, something like that. Maybe your teammates are pushing aggro, and that's opportunities, or they're using ultimates, that sort of thing. Then you adjust downwards with lack of resources. This one right here is maybe an important one to pay attention to for yourself. Resources are going to be things such as your health bar, so you got to pay attention to it. Also your shield health and your abilities, right? Ultimate's not really, because Ultimate's more of it's a kind of like, it's something that'll come around every once in a while, and it's like usually a big advantage. Whereas the other things should be constants, right? If you don't have health, you cannot play aggressive. If you are 1 HP, how are you supposed to run into their team? You're just gonna die, right?
Yeah.
So if you're 1 HP, that is pretty much equivalent to 0% aggression. You should be backing out and getting healed. If you have full HP, then it doesn't necessarily. If you're full HP, that doesn't mean that you go up to 100%. It just means that you have the capability to. It doesn't adjust you upwards. It just doesn't adjust you downwards if you have it. Right? Your shield, same thing. If you don't have shield, if you push in without shield, they're just gonna shred you. If you don't have, now charge and fire strike aren't as big of things, but if you don't have charge, maybe that doesn't give you as much mobility, right? That's sort of fire strike, not as much options.
Yeah.
Then and then usually Reinhardt, like around that like half HP. Notice how you still have armor left. Around that half HP, once you lose that armor, that's around that time where you should probably stop being at that, like, stop swinging, maybe start to look to back up and start shielding up, right?
Right. Yeah.
Remembering that armor also gives you more tankiness into things like Reaper shotguns and things like that.
Yeah.
All right. Finally, danger. Danger is not necessarily being 1 HP. I can be 1 HP and around this corner and perfectly safe. But also that's lack of resources. Or you can be full HP and in the middle of their team, or be full HP and sitting next to a diva bomb and be very much in danger.
Yeah.
That's aggressive scaling. So other things to note in here is that all of these things are all happening at the same time. This can be very overwhelming to think about as you're starting off, but like as you practice at it, it'll start to kind of fall into place and become much easier to keep track of. Remembering that in your head. And I don't sit when I play the game. I don't sit there thinking, "Oh, I should be at 50% aggression," just because I have so much experience at it. It just comes. It just is a natural thing. It's a natural thing. But as you're trying to make it a natural thing, this is really handy to the basics of learning it. Another thing is don't think one of them. You're not going to come into a fight and then be at 100% for the next 10 seconds. You might be able to, but that's not going to be an all-the-time thing. Sometimes, let's say you walk into a fight and you're at a 50%, and then you go, oh, that person's 1 HP, so you run in, and then somebody ults and they shoot at you, and now you're 1 HP. Right? So now you just went from 50 to 100 to 0 within the course of 1 second.
Yeah.
Right? So sometimes it can be very fluctuant and fluid, and it'll go all over the place. So that's why you got to pay attention. This is very aggression is very heavily linked with awareness. Usually, I combine them of awareness / aggression, because you're not going to know how aggressive you can be. You're not going to be able to know when you push if you don't know what the heck is happening around you.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So before we move on, all of that makes sense. Any questions on it?
No, that makes sense. Yeah. Just yeah. So, I mean, what would you sort of at this point, sort of, what would you say, sort of aggression scaling, sort of at the start, sort of probably quite high aggression scaling, and then because you've got the 2 picks, and then sort of it's moving down, it's dropped down below 50% as my health's come down, and
So you don't necessarily need to do this and go, woo.
yeah.
We're at like maybe like a 60. Maybe we bump it down to like a 20 or 25 and wait a second, and then we can bump it back up.
Okay.
Right? But just put the shield up is a simple thing here.
Yeah. Yeah.
They've won or lost a fight. This is very closely related to to aggression scaling, particularly in aggression scaling. This is related to advantages and disadvantages. Is how do you tell whether or not you've won or lost a fight? When you're trying to pay attention to awareness to the advantages and disadvantages we talked about before, one of the biggest things is are you up or are you down, people? For this, be watching kill feed. Kill feed is a great place. It tells you if you're up, if you're down. Another thing as well is if you go to controls, you can play sound when enemy is eliminated and play sound when teammate is eliminated. You can turn those on, and that's basically an in-game audio cue. That it gives you like a little ping sound when people die. It varies in pitch depending on how many people die, and also varies depending on if it's teammate or enemy. So it's basically like an
Right.
auditory kill feed.
All right.
So pay attention to kill feed. If you are up, and I'd say pay attention to the numbers here, because oftentimes people will they'll maybe remember the basic concept, but then they'll forget the numbers here. If you are up or down 1 to 2 people, that is an advantage or a disadvantage. Flat up, right? That's what it is. So if you're up people, you play more aggro. If you're down, you play more passive. If you are up or down 2 to 3 people, that is a one fight or a lost fight. In which case you play super aggro, or you back out. You get out if you can. If you can't get out, you let them kill you. And you also don't want to use ultimates in won or lost fights, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So went 1 to 2 and then 2 to 3.
Yeah.
Theoretically, this can can change up here, but 2 is usually in the middle because there are a lot of other things that go into whether or not you've won or lost fights. Like we said before, other advantages and disadvantages. And the general rule of thumb is if you come into a fight
Yep.
that pulls it back, that balances it out, right? That's the only case in which it's still even. So let's say you're up 2 people, but your entire team is 1 HP, right?
Yeah.
That might change some things because now you're all in danger of dying, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, or let's
Yeah. Yeah. It's not. Yeah. Yes.
spend a minute on controls so we can kind of get that out of the way and like not have to worry about it. Um, let's see, how do we want to do this? Firstly, do you ever feel like you have problems with like your FPS at all? With running the game performance?
I mean, I'm on console. I'm on
Console.
PS5,
Okay.
so yeah.
Gotcha. All right. So, and not really. And I would take from that.
No, not really. Not that.
Really.
No.
Okay.
Uh,
Gotcha. So then moving on, sound settings. I recommend turning master volume loud enough. That's subjective because everyone has different system and headset volumes. So just make sure it's loud enough so you can hear things. Music volume, I
yeah.
recommend turning off or down as that can clutter with your audio. With your headset, make sure that you go and check that you have surround sound enabled. And if it is not an option for your headset, I don't know if they added this for Overwatch 2 to console, but there's spatial audio. Dolby Atmos for headphones is the in-game version of surround sound that you can enable. Also minor, I guess actually for not actually a thing for console here for the last one.
So yeah, I've just got for the device. I've just got the audio mix. I've not got the
Yeah. So then
spatial audio.
in that case, I would just make sure that for your headset that you actually have surround sound built in. And if
Yeah.
that's not like if you're using like a pair of like $5-10 random headsets you found around, I might recommend upgrading. You can find surround sound for not insanely expensive, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're
I
trying,
mean,
yeah.
I've got the PlayStation Pulse headset, so I
Mhm.
think it's got the surround sound.
Yep, gotcha. Moving on. Note, I'm not going to go through every single one, but note if you go
Yeah.
to get controls and change hero, there are a lot of hero specific settings that you can customize. So the common one that goes across a lot of different characters. So firstly, you can adjust reticle
Yeah.
across different characters. The common one though is going to be sensitivities across different characters, not mouse sensitivity, but abilities and shooting sensitivities and things like that. So,
Yeah, that
are
is
you?
something that
Yeah.
I've noticed. Sort of I don't know. It takes a little bit for my shield to come out, and there's times when you like Sigma's throwing a rock or something, and I press L2, but the shield just doesn't come out quick enough, and
Yeah, well,
ends up sort
that's not what this is. Unfortunately,
of. Oh, right,
there's
okay.
not a setting that you can change that will make your shield come out
All right, okay.
faster. But what this does, so for Zenyatta, you know how he throws orbs on his teammates.
Yep.
If you have this at 10%, which is the lowest, then that means that you have to be directly aiming on top of somebody for orb to register on them.
Okay.
But if this is at 100%, then you can look off of the person, but it might be a little too inaccurate. It might just kind of go to maybe somebody's like close to you and it goes to the person who's closer to you rather than the person who you're aiming at. So
Yeah.
across,
Okay.
and this is going to be something that applies to Zen Orbs, Mercy Beam and Fly, Kiriko TP, Ana Nano, Zarya
Yeah.
Bubbles, Sombra Hack, Brig Armor Packs. It applies to quite a few characters.
Yeah. Lots of.
Um, and usually I recommend between maybe like 50 at a minimum for certain characters, 50 to 80.
Yeah. Okay.
Most of the time there's like more like 60 to 80 across those. And then there's also other minor things like Lucio has some things and some different tanks have some minor things. Then you just kind of mess around with. Um, let's go gameplay. I don't think there's anything in here that you need to worry about. Accessibility, if you all verse accessibility. This is maybe something you've seen around, but just in case. Make sure you have camera shake reduced, HUD shake off, and reduce menu movement on. This will make it just so that your whole HUD isn't shaking around when it doesn't need to
Okay.
be.
Yep.
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 Alrighty. I think that's most settings right there. Not too much
Okay.
else. Maybe other minor things could be waypoint waypoint opacities, turning that down so that it's not on the maximum and you can't see people through it. Another one that I think I changed was if you go to pinging, you can ping button, you can actually adjust enemy ping sensitivity and stuff. Like you can actually change like a few settings and like mess around with it, like how fast you have to click it, for it to register as like a double click.
Okay.
You know how when you hold it down, how it'll bring up the wheel.
Yeah.
I was noticing that it would pull up the wheel way too fast. Like I would just press the button, and then it would pull up the wheel, and then that would throw off my aim. Like for example, I'd be shooting at something, and then I'm trying to ping, and then it would it would like frame like skip because it's trying to ping and pulls up the wheel and
Yeah.
then I'm off the person. So you can actually raise it so that it you have to hold it longer for it to pull up the wheel, and then that way it's not
Okay.
accidentally pulling up the wheel, stuff like that.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not gonna do a big long review for this session because we weren't really doing gameplay the entire time.
Okay. Yeah.
Basics of it that we went over was awareness/aggression, right? Pay attention
Yeah.
to your surroundings. Put it all on aggression scaling. When do you go in? When do you back out? Pay attention to your surroundings. That was a lot of what we discussed for this one. And then think about your mistakes, right? Think about how you could be doing better. Make the intentionality on the improvement. All that mindset stuff that we discussed. Any questions for first session?
No, not that I can think of. Nothing. Nothing off the top of my head, anyway.
Okay. Sounds good to me. So I